welcome to the Ghost of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 248 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 22 of A Feast for Crows, that's Arya 2.
And as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you, unless, of course, you have the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that involves spoilers, then we will spoil it for you. But regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We will summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background compared to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes, they'll provide some additional information about the characters and geography of this chapter. How are you, Mackelly?
I'm doing all right. I just realised as you were reading out the first bit there, and I know you were reading because despite us being on episode 248, we still read these intros.
Heck, we read that part. I could never do it without reading. Do you remember the one time I tried to do it without reading and I couldn't even remember the first word? I was like, ah.
That's how I knew you were reading.
But I did, out of the corner of my eye, I saw you smiling, so I knew something was going on.
Well, I was just, the next time you and I are together recording will be episode 250.
Oh, that's right, because I'm skipping 249, yes. Yeah,
so I was
that's
just
crazy.
Thinking. I was just thinking about how I always get impressed with how many episodes we have.
You're easily impressed.
I am easily impressed. I'm doing all right. It's we did something this weekend that, well, I should say I did something this weekend that you will be both confused and bewildered by because it's slightly out of character for me.
Go on. I'm curious.
I went to a bourbon tasting.
And well, it was kind of you to be the designated driver.
That's what you... Yeah, so we went... we were visiting my mother-in-law, who lives about a little over an hour away. She wanted to take us to this distillery because it's brand new and it's really nice and, it's pretty neat and all that. She wanted us to see it. So we had lunch there, and then she signed us up for this distillery tour where they take you through, how the process is made, and you get to look into the vats that are being, fermented and all that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
And at the end, there is a tasting. And so I didn't want to taste, but I was like, she paid for it. It was like $25 a head. So I was like, all right, wow. I'll try it. So, and Molly was sitting next to me. Molly had a little glass of water, obviously, because she is not of age. So us two novices are down at the end of the table. And they gave us 3 different types of bourbon. And the first 2, it was like, I don't even know. I can't even describe how terrible it was.
the thing is, if you're going to fall off the wagon, that's a long drop you've right. chosen there.
I should have started with like some light beer or something.
Yeah, exactly. You have a Miller Lite, you'll be like, that's nasty, but, I get the point.
It was, like, I didn't have more than just the tiniest bit hitting my lips to make it past.
Did Molly like it?
She tried as much as I did, and we were both like spitting fire. I felt like Valerian. It was like a spit take across. Luckily, no one was sitting across from us. Oh, it was terrible.
This is how you do it. You're a professional taster.
Oh, it was so... It would... I didn't taste anything because it would just immediately burn my mouth and throat. So,
yeah,
I couldn't
do that.
I couldn't tell you what it tastes like because I just felt fire and brimstone.
But there's a but here. What about the third one?
The third one was all right. It was a pistachio cream bourbon. So yeah, it had the fire and brimstone.
It tasted a bit like ice cream. So
yes, it did. Yes, it did. Now Molly still thought it was terrible, but I thought it was, of the 3, leaps and bounds more palatable than the first 2.
So did you drink all of that one?
No, I still did not drink all of it. I just had one sip and was like, okay, that's enough. But apparently the lady that gave us the tour said bourbon, there's a 3-sip process to bourbon. The first 2 sips are going to burn, and then the third sip is smooth. So with the very first one, I tried 3 tiny sips. They all burned just as much as the as the others. So
for you, it's 9 sips.
I guess so. Till I pass out. Anyway, so that's what I was up to.
That's fascinating. So I've been on a management training course, which is always interesting.
Oh yes,
I always love these things. I find them. I find the mixture of like, my God, as a company, we really need to make money. That's the only thing that matters. With pseudoscience nonsense, you might as well be reading a astrology kit.
Your horoscope.
Fascinating. Yes. So they identified 9 characteristics of managers that can create negative outcomes from their team, and one of them was being an optimist.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And I could see this. They were saying the point is, if you're always optimistic, then what happens when things go wrong? Your team is going to think, you don't understand what's going on. You don't understand what's happening to us guys because you're so optimistic. When, you see.
Yes, I do see. Yes.
So what they did was they made us all self-identify as one of these traits, and then they threw us off into like breakout rooms with other people in the same trait. So me and this other guy were the 2 optimists, and they sent us into a breakout room and they told us to figure out why it could be a good thing, why it could be a bad thing, and then come back and report back.
Okay.
But the thing is, if you throw 2 optimists in a room and ask them to say what's wrong, we're like, there's nothing wrong.
It'll all work out in the end.
It's going to work out, exactly. We can recognize the fact that this might cause a problem, but you know what? It'll be fine in the long run.
Right.
So we reported this back and we said, we do recognize the circularity of our argument, right. But at the same time,
what do you expect? Optimists. Yeah,
exactly.
They need to throw one pessimist in there with you.
Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
It's like laundry. If you just have one item in there, it just kind of gets caught in the circle and never gets dry.
One red sock.
Yes.
That's going to change the whole color.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. You need the red sock.
And before we start the podcast, can I also say that I am, me in the Olympics.
Yes.
I've ranted before about the Olympics, yeah?
Yes, I believe
Usually it's about NBC's coverage, but can I just rant about the fact that LeBron James will be carrying the American flag?
I was kind of annoyed by that too. He's got enough.
The man has had everything he ever wants in life. He's going to be surrounded by 19-year-old kids for whom this is the greatest moment in their life.
I felt
and
the same way.
He's the one carrying the flag.
It's funny, I had a very similar thought. I thought, this is the Olympics. Let an Olympic sport athlete get their moment in the sun.
Exactly. Now, you could argue, but they'll be so excited to see LeBron James. They would be even more excited to see him in amongst them.
Sure.
Walking with them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I'm not all that passionate about it, but that was the thought that crossed my mind was, why LeBron James? Why not an Olympic sport athlete?
The thing about it is it feeds into my annoyance about basketball in the Olympics and about soccer in the Olympics and about tennis in the Olympics and about golf in the Olympics. Though all of those sports have their own outlets. They don't need the Olympics.
Right.
Leave the Olympics for the Olympic sports,
Agreed.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes. Well, they didn't ask our opinion, so, well,
Well, now they can hear it. If they tune into episode 248.
It's out there.
All right, well, let's get down to business. How did we leave the one and only Arya Stark? Well, as we saw of Arya, she was arriving in Braavos. Her coin and her password Vala Morghulis, got her into the temple of the many-faced god. Her true name was extracted from her, and she outgrossed the priest by trying to eat his worm. And you had to be there to understand what I'm talking about.
Yes, you did.
Mackelly, why don't we give the summary of this one?
When you said the one and only Arya Stark, maybe you should have said the no one and only Arya Stark.
I like it.
Uh-huh.
Fix that in post if you can.
Okay, will do. Well, Arya is finding her feet in the House of Black and White. She mutters her prayers every night. Gregor, Dunsen, Raff the Sweetling, Ilian, Meryn, Cersei. But it is so quiet in the temple that the kindly man hears and asks who they are. She tries to lie, but he sees through it, and upon learning the truth, he tells her that revenge has no place here. It's not for them to decide who lives and dies. That's the job of the many-faced god. He's every god that people worship, but the only one they all must face.
The kindly priest and the waif girl are her two main companions, but she never learns their names. They wear black and white robes. 3 acolytes, one Ned's age and the other 2 teenagers, also do, but they have no cowls. Arya is dressed as a servant. The kindly man is the only one who knows the common tongue, but she begins to pick up some basic Braavosi. They pray by the pool each morning. People come in throughout the day, mostly alone. They light candles at the feet of one of the many gods, and then some drink from the pool. More don't drink.
The knoll on which the temple stands is honeycombed with tunnels. The priests and acolytes live on the first level, the servants on the second, and the third is off limits to all but the priests. Arya is free to explore, and she does. She helps in the kitchen. The area is rich in seafood. In the evenings, she can ask questions such as, why are the visitors so peaceful? Aren't they afraid to die? That's not the worst thing. It's an end to want and suffering. In the Nightlands, you'll find peace.
She continues to provide him with the answers that he wants, but he knows that she's pandering. When she annoys him, he calls her Arya of House Stark. All who stay must serve and obey. She is willing. In the morning, she tours the temple with the kindly man, finding the bodies. She notifies the servants who prepare the bodies that are then taken to the sanctum on the 3rd floor. One evening, she has a sudden fear that Uma the cook is serving up the dead, but the kindly man sees her face and reassures her that it's pork, just pork.
That part made me chuckle when I read it. In her cell, she keeps her possessions: a fork, a hat, boots, belt, gloves, a dagger, coins, and, of course, needle. She still practices her needlework. The waif sees her one night and says nothing, but the next day the kindly man tells her that these are Arya of House Stark's possessions. She must get rid of them. He says that there are other places for her, but she is adamant that she wants to be here. That evening, she goes out and throws her possessions into the canal. Well, except for Needle. She hides Needle under a loose cobblestone. She never tells the kindly man of her deeds, but she's sure he knows.
He tells her of the origins of the many-faced god. In the fiery slave mines under Old Valyria, the first faceless man stood up to the slaveholders. He heard the slaves praying in 100 languages, but the gods all appeared deaf. These poor creatures just needed release from their suffering, and he provided it, becoming an instrument of all gods. Arya does not like the injustice. He should have killed the slavers. A tale for another day, says the kindly man. Arya and the waif are to learn each other's languages. Her servant's garb is replaced by the black and white robe of the acolyte.
They practice by lying to each other. The waif always seemed to spot Arya's lies, where Arya was just guessing on the waif's lies. One revelation is that the waif is 36 years old. The kindly man confirms this, saying that the poison had affected her physically. Arya wants to know how Jaqen H'ghar changed his face. The kindly man sets her to practicing facial exercises, which she does diligently. To complete the language training, she's going to sell seafood at the docks, and her name isn't even Sally, so... Anyway. There she will be Cat, an orphan from King's Landing.
I feel like there's a story behind that you'll have to explain to the listeners, because I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
Sally sells seafood by the seashore, you know? That tongue twister.
I feel like it's not Sally in England.
I think it's Sally sells seafood by the seashore.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
I feel like it's Sally. Well, Whatever. She chose Cat instead of Sally. Sally would have been the more fitting name there, but maybe they were worried about tongue twisters and Braavosi. Well, anyway, she will be Cat, an orphan from King's Landing. She leaves the temple that evening, happier than she's been in a long time. Valor Morgulus, Valor Morgulus, Valor Morgulus, she chants after saying her usual prayer.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. So, she's getting her feet under the table here at the House of Black and White.
Yeah, she's making her way.
Yeah.
She needs to update her prayer list a little bit because Gregor...
No, it seems pretty good to me, no?
Well, Gregor is the lead-off batter, and...
Is he dead?
Well, as far as we know, he's dead. His skull has been stripped of flesh and headed for Sunspear, but...
A skull has been stripped of flesh and headed for Sunspear. I trust nobody in King's Landing.
Right. We are told that it's Gregor Clegane, but yes, you're right. It could be a legit list if Gregor is indeed not dead, as we are told. Dunsen, just because it comes up, the list comes up, I'll give you a quick rundown of where we are with the list again. Dunsen is on the list, one, because he was part of Gregor's men, the terrible men. He stole Gendry's bull helmet. That earned him a spot on the list. Raff the Sweetling killed Lamy Greenhands when Lamy couldn't walk. Obviously, Sir Illian beheaded her father, Ned.
Yep.
Sir Meryn killed Syrio Forel, or at least we believe. We've never heard from Syrio Forel again, so we assume he's dead. And it's Cersei is Cersei. There's no need to explain about that last one.
Yeah.
So, but about this, so she whispers her prayer list into her pillow every night, and yet the kindly man knows that she's doing it. And if I were Arya, I would find that rather disconcerting. Like, if she's whispering, how does he know that she's doing this?
That's according to the POV chapter. It's because it was so quiet. Even her whispering could be heard. But I'm with you. I mean, that would be disconcerting to me. Like
yes,
if she farts in the night, they would hear it too.
How many portions of beans did you have last night? It wasn't me.
Yeah, so it's not like they're spying on her. At least that's the way it's reported. Now, to be clear to people not reading the books, it's not the chapters are not written first person. They are still written third person, but they are from the point of view of that character. So we assume that what we read are the thoughts of that character. And she definitely says here. Well, no, we don't necessarily assume that. We assume that there is a narrator who's seeing things through her eyes, and the narrator says that it is so quiet that even her whispering is heard by all. But that seems a bit strange to me. You'd have to have paper-thin walls for that to be true.
Right, or someone listening in the grate,
Yeah. But you see, if that was the case, her POV would say, somebody must be spying on me.
True. Yeah, she doesn't question how he knows. So, yeah.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
The kindly man asks if her kill list is the reason that Arya is at the House of Black and White. She says maybe, but I think it's more than maybe. I mean, I think that's why she's here. She saw what Jaqen could do, and she wants that power so that she can enact her revenge on her kill list. I think that's a statement of fact.
I think that's true now. I think that's why she wants to stay. The reason she ended up here is because she had nowhere to go. Remember, she was in Salt Pans. Captain Ternesio wouldn't go to Eastwatch by the Sea to take her to Jon. So, since they were a Braavosi ship heading back to Braavos, she pulled out the iron coin given to her by Jaqen, and that's how she ended up here. But yes, I think she wants to stay because I think she feels she can learn something valuable.
Yeah. I mean, if this is where Jaqen learned his trade, then yes, he clearly has abilities that she would find useful if she could adopt them too.
Right.
I found it noteworthy that most of the worshippers who come in during the day do not drink from the pool.
Agreed.
Now, clearly the pool is poisoned water, which so what she was saying was that they light a candle to their favorite god, then they drink from the pool, and then they crawl over to their candle and die at the feet of their god. So the water is poisoned and it kills them. But she said most of the worshippers don't drink the water.
Yes.
So what's curious to me about that is, and I don't think the book explained this, does that mean that they back out?
Right.
And like
yes.
go home?
So yeah.
Or do they die anyway in
right.
some way?
Do they come to pray for someone else's death? Maybe elderly or sick loved one? Or do they come to take their own life and then can't go through with it and leave and come back another day when they've gotten more courage or whatever?
Yeah. And clearly, if it is the latter, if it is a sort of like a change of heart, the priests do not interfere in any way, shape, or form. They leave people to their own devices. They let people make their own choices.
Right,
here.
right. Yeah.
There's no coercion once you're in the door. There's
Yes.
no, well, you came in now.
Right. There's no hard sell. What do I have to tell you to get you to make a deal today? But, the religion of the many-faced God, kind of what you were just saying is, they let the people decide when it's time, which is, a departure from a lot of other religions, both in our world and the known world.
To be clear, I also think it's a departure from the origins of the many-faced God, because the first faceless man was not waiting for the individual to decide it was time, other than the individual was saying, I want to be out of here.
Right.
The faceless man was very much taking things into his own hands.
Right. You prayed for it. You're getting it.
Yeah, right.
We don't know. Maybe he went up to them and said, are you sure?
Yeah, well,
Are
true,
you
true.
sure you're sure? But
Yeah.
there's a line where she says, it was in the summary. I can't remember which of us read it, but she asks, why are people so peaceful when they come here? Aren't they afraid to die? Where I come from, most people are afraid to die. And his response is that the gift from the many-faced God takes many forms, but here it's always gentle. So there's a peace to it. I kind of, that for some reason, that line kind of struck me.
Yeah. I mean, to drink a poison that doesn't make you thrash in agony and slip away in your sleep is probably truly peaceful.
Right.
I wouldn't choose it yet.
Right. You'd want to wait for the appropriate time.
Yeah.
But,
120, 130 more years.
Sure. Yeah.
Ready to go.
Exactly. But, like we were saying a few minutes ago, the kindly man says you're free to go. You don't have to be here.
Yeah. He actively encourages her in
Yes.
some ways. He's like, go.
You
don't have to abandon being Arya of House Stark. You can leave here.
Yes.
We're not.
And she says she wants to stay. And, I mean, the question to discuss is why. We've already talked about it a little bit, saying that she thinks she could learn something valuable from them. But it's also the fact that she has really, she has nowhere else to go,
Right.
And,
more than one point in the chapter, she talks about for the first time that she can remember, she's going to bed in a comfortable bed with a full belly.
yes, right.
So just the simplicity of that is
Right.
enough to make her stay for a while. But
Yeah, but it's also, I mean, we've known for a while, basically since the sacking of the Tower of the Hand, that she's a bit obsessed with death and killing. I mean, her prayer is literally a list of people she wants to kill. So, in some ways it's understandable that she wants to learn about this religion that kind of revolves around death, because it's affected her life so significantly at such a young age. So,
yeah. That's an interesting point to muse on, because she has lost all connection to everything she's ever known. She's now on a different continent
Right.
than even her gods. They barely show up in Essos, her gods. And she has nothing and no one. So it would be easy for a religion to entrap her. But of all the religions that would try to entrap her, this one seems to be the softest sell. They're doing nothing other than feeding her to keep her there.
Right. Yeah.
And in fact, actively saying, we don't think you belong. We suspect you're here for the wrong reasons.
Yes. Yeah. And I think she's tempted. One of the lines she has is that I'll be no one because no one has no holes inside her like I do. So in some ways, it's tempting to no longer be Arya Stark, to let go of all the pain and suffering that she's dealt with, all the trauma, that she's dealt with since her father was killed.
You're making me feel the feels, as the youth would say.
Right. Well, the old self, who cared for all those that she's lost, that no one won't care about the loss of loved ones because she's no one. She's no longer Arya Stark. Yeah. So she will let all that go. So, and that way it's, I'm sure, as much as she struggles with the concept of letting go of Arya Stark, because according to the kindly man and the waif, she hasn't, despite what she says, you could see how it might be tempting to want to try to do it, to let go of it all.
But fundamentally, she isn't letting go.
No, she's not.
The core of her being has become this prayer. She is a broken person, and only by killing those who've wronged her will she get peace and closure, which is terribly sad for someone of her age.
Oh yeah, Arya's story.
But you know what? Godspeed. I hope she gets it.
Yeah. Arya's story, if you really take a step back and look at Arya's story, it's incredibly tragic. It's probably the most tragic of all the stories that we're following through this, A Song of Ice and Fire, because she's so small and has so little agency, so little control over anything, and all she's been met with basically since the end of Game of Thrones is tragedy.
And the sort of the spice on that, the kicker of it, is that she's tried. She hasn't been a passive observer. She's wanted to try to give herself agency so that she can fight it.
Right.
But she's just so small that she can't, So everything she's done has just fallen flat. She's really... Sansa, to a certain extent, brought it on herself. She was never... Well, she literally brought it on herself when she, blabbed to Cersei. But B... she focused on her fairy tales and her needlework when Arya was focusing on her needlework.
Right. The other kind of needle.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, the kindly man does offer her, when he says you don't have to stay here, he offers her alternatives. And, including the options he gives her, though, are as a prostitute and as a wife. So, she's only 10. So, first of all, I'm not sure that it's appropriate for him to be offering her that as...
Can have a couple of years to think about that.
Yeah, right. And then the third option is a ship back to Westeros, which she declines. Although, as I was saying a few minutes ago, her original plan was to go to Eastwatch by the Sea to get to Jon. It's possible that the kindly man could help her facilitate that. Find a ship that might be going to Eastwatch by the Sea. We know there's one coming to town because they're bringing Sam and Sam's crew. So it will be heading back to Eastwatch by the Sea soon.
Oh, I've realized how they're going to meet. She's going to sell him an oyster po' boy.
Maybe. I felt like the options that he's offering her are a little bit sexist as well. A prostitute or a wife. Maybe if he had offered the right training or the right place, the right station, she might have taken it. But then on the other hand, possibly there's not many other options for young girls in Braavos, I guess.
He's also a priest, and not to belittle religion or anything, but priests often live a very sheltered life with a little, not full understanding of the way the world is outside their cloister.
Well, sure, yeah. He does seem to know what's happening. He knows that there is this ship leaving and going to these ports, and so.
Yeah, you're right. He should have said, "You could be CEO of a multinational company."
Right. Yes.
You could be president. There's nothing you couldn't be.
Yes, exactly. Building her up, not giving her two options. So there's a line here in this chapter that the kindly man says to Arya where he refers to her as Arya Stark, eater of grave worms. And just as a quick reminder, actually, I believe it was up in the summary. That's in reference to the fact that when they first met, he took his cowl off and his face was dead and rotting, and there was a worm, and she plucked the worm off of his face and started to eat it before he turned his face normal and the grave worm disappeared. So that's what he's referring to there.
Yeah. The kindly man reminds her constantly that she has to give up everything that makes her an individual to serve the many-faced god. And that has to start with her worldly possessions, but it also has to strip down to her character. So she can throw away the worldly possessions, but she's also got to throw away her title and her self. She's got to become a faceless man, basically.
Right. Yeah. I think she took it a bit too literally when she started throwing things into the canal. She included her small clothes.
I don't think he intended, but hey.
When she's purging, she's just going all out, I guess.
Yeah. It's perhaps a good way to obfuscate the whole needle hiding thing.
Right. Where am I going to hide it? Yeah, it was, speaking of needle, there was too much sentimentality and nostalgia. She couldn't do it. She thought, you know what? It was a miracle that needle came back to me after it was taken from me. And so maybe the old gods want me to actually keep this sword. And so she finds a rock, a loose rock, and hides it under there.
Yeah. This whole thing, the sort of like, it's, like most of George Martin's stuff, it's well written, but it brings together the natural progression of her storyline, because ever since she lost Nymeria, she's been losing her identity, more
Right.
and more and more.
Yeah.
And to fall into a religion where the tenet of the priesthood of the religion is you have to abandon your identity. It's kind of a perfect sort of like continuation of her story. But this feels like a huge moment to sort of like, really abandon her own name and all this thing. But the fact that she hides Needle rather than throws it away just gives us that one last thread that's yet unbroken back to the story. Because if she threw that away, then honestly, her story she could become a faceless man and have nothing more to do with the rest of the story.
Yep.
But that fact that she hid Needle keeps her connected to the rest of the story.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, I really like that. And actually, Jenny just this week posted in the Discord server one of her favorite paragraphs in all of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I'll just read it to you all.
It's Arya's reason for not throwing away Needle,
yes,
right?
Exactly. It exactly is. That Needle was Robb and Bran and Rickon, her mother and father, even Sansa. Needle was Winterfell's gray walls and the laughter of its people. Needle was the summer snows, old Nan's stories, the heart tree with its red leaves and scary face, the warm earthy smell of glass gardens, the sound of the north wind rattling the shutters of her room. Needle was Jon Snow's smile. He used to mess my hair and call me little sister, she remembered, and suddenly there were tears in her eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a really good chapter. Although, honestly, Nan's stories, I might throw the Needle away, honestly. I would still have nightmares if I was Arya.
Yeah, hearing her thoughts about Needle and how much Needle means to her and how much it represents everything that she's lost, that she thinks that she has a hole in her heart, but the tears in her eyes as she, wraps up thinking about all that Needle means to her clearly proves that there is a heart there. It's just been armored by all the trauma and pain and loss and suffering that she's endured. So,
yeah,
she's still got emotions down in there. She's just buried them as deep as she could.
Yeah. On the subject of buried deep,
yes,
we learn
good
the
transition.
Story of the. You put it up there, I'll knock it down. The story of the first faceless man and the birth of the many-faced god religion is found under in the mines under Old Valyria. they continue to mine deeper and deeper below the 14 flames. So my question is, do you think that, Valeria's not there anymore.
Right. It's smoking ruins now.
Indeed. And you know what happened in the mines of Moria?
Right.
The dwarves dug too deep.
Yes.
Do you think the Valyrians sent their slaves too deep and unleashed holy hell upon themselves?
It's very possible, yeah. As I read that, when I saw it in the sheet here, I thought, that is a really good hypothesis. I like the idea. Yeah, it's possible they could have set off a volcanic eruption that destroyed all the freehold, or they could have unleashed something that destroyed them all.
Well, I was thinking volcanic, but of course this is a world where magic exists, so sure, it could be a Balrog.
Right. Yeah.
You got to imagine if you were the slave who was like banging on that last little sort of like, wafer thin wall, you'd be like listening and feeling the heat and being like, you sure you want me? You're absolutely sure.
Keep going. Okay.
Feels like this might be a bad idea.
Now, another idea, playing off of this whole the doom coming from the situation with the slaves, is the kindly man. Arya is upset that the first faceless man kills the slaves and not kills the Valerians.
The slavers.
Yes. And the kindly man says that he did bring the gift to the masters, but that's a story for another day. Best told to no one, meaning when she's finally shed Arya Stark. Yes. But could the faceless man have brought the doom in some way? Is that what we're going to learn sometime?
That's very true, actually. I hadn't really thought about that. I was thinking it was a more individual revenge, but yes, of course, the more complete revenge would be the doom of Valyria at his hands.
Yes, because of their
also
greed.
A little flex of the god as well.
Yeah, right.
So this god basically just strangles dying slaves in their sleeps. That's not so good. Oh, he leveled the biggest city on the planet. Okay.
Right.
Kudos to you, Many-Faced God.
Yes, maybe. Maybe that's where we're going to go with that story eventually.
We know he saw through her every time she lied. We knew she was lying because she kept saying she was no one while harboring her kill list, her needle, her name. We knew that, but the kindly man knew it too. And by the end of the chapter, he explains how he knows that he has a built-in lie detector. He can watch people's facial behavior, and he knows when they're lying or not. Can I just say in passing, this is not real? I've had this discussion before. Even the best detectives in the world only get about 55% right on the lying to the truth.
That's barely above a guess.
Exactly. And lie detectors are worse than the best detectives.
Wow.
The lie detector machines never agree to do one of those. Say, I'll toss a coin.
Right.
Yeah? Heads, I'm telling the truth. Tails, I'm lying.
Not as good a chance, huh?
Exactly.
Huh.
Yeah. But yes, but he can see from the ticks and things. Let me expand. I think I've said this before on the podcast, but the way to tell if someone's lying is to ask them to say what happened, then ask them to say what happened again with a little bit more detail, then ask them to say what happened again with a lot more detail. And if they're telling the truth, they can provide the additional details, and if they're lying, they cannot.
Oh, wow, look at you. Maybe you should be a detective with that kind of knowledge.
What? This weekend we were talking about what we would do if we could do anything and money was no object. And I said, I don't think I would do it, but I think I would enjoy being a police detective.
I could see that. Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. I could see you doing that.
It's a strange choice for me because
it is. People who don't know you well enough might think, what? That makes no sense. Yeah. But no, I could see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what I would do. I'd say, all right, tell me again. Tell me again and tell me about the sounds you were hearing. Tell me again and tell me about the smells you were smelling.
Right. Yeah.
And the thing is, if they're telling the truth, they'll come up with those additional details. But if they're lying, they won't be able to.
Or they'll start stumbling.
Exactly. That's what they'll do. Because if they've heard the podcast, they'll know that that's what they're supposed to do. So they'll keep this under wraps. Don't let it out, anyone.
Yeah. All our listeners.
You lot are all law-abiding citizens. I trust you. Just don't tell your nefarious friends.
Well, that's great insight into lie detection. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure our listeners do too. So
should they be trying to get away with something?
So I put this line in here about the waif picking up common tongue faster than Arya is picking up Braavosi. One, because I think it's pretty unusual for the adult to be picking up a language faster than children.
Good eye. I hadn't thought of that.
I think children generally pick up languages a lot faster than adults, correct?
They think the elasticity of the brain of a child is much better at adapting language.
Yeah, that's what I figured. So I wondered if possibly the common tongue is a lot easier of a language to learn, and that's why it's the common tongue. It's a very basic, simple language that people can pick up pretty quickly, whereas these more regional languages like Braavosi are more challenging, more nuanced.
I was reading a little bit about language recently, and it was saying that humans developed language before they developed their vocal cords, and so some of the oldest languages on Earth have sort of clicks and ticks in them because they didn't have the vocal range to say the things that we can say now.
Yeah.
So the oldest languages have things that you could do without the vocal cords.
Like
so I found that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That is pretty neat. That's really cool.
The other one, my absolute favorite language story, just to bore you some more with my crappy knowledge.
Not boring at all.
Is about how there was debate about whether a language gave you thought paths or it cut off thought paths. When you develop language as a small child, are you creating thought paths or are you losing them? And the has become that you're losing them.
Wow.
Because basically the language that you learn stifles some thought paths that will otherwise exist. And the example that was given is in Korean, there is a preposition which is around whether or not something is held tightly or held loosely.
Okay.
And every Korean person can see immediately if something's held tightly or held loosely. Every collection of things falls into one of these two categories, but the concept doesn't exist in English.
Yeah. Right.
So if you ask an English person, if you show an English person 4 photographs of objects and say which is the odd one out, they won't be able to do it. But a Korean person will go, that one's the odd one out, because they'll immediately see that one's held loosely while the other 3 are held tightly.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. Babies, pre-verbal babies, can play that game. And pre-verbal English-speaking babies can see the things that they won't be able to see once they learn English.
That is something. That's quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I find the development of language a really fascinating subject. I really do.
Yeah.
But you've raised a point that I'd never thought of. I didn't think about the fact that the waif should have been slower to pick it up. I wonder if she's had a bit more exposure. You know, she lives in Braavos, which is a coastal town.
Right.
And so maybe she's had a little bit more exposure, but it is an incongruous point that she would pick it up quicker than Arya.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I figured maybe it was an easier language and therefore it is common.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think that's why in many respects English has become the lingua franca of the world, is because it is quite an easy language to learn. I remember a Spanish lady telling me, she said it's the easiest language to pick up. She said it's just full of exceptions.
Yes, it is.
I mean, like constantly you've got to like remember all these exceptions.
Right.
But the basic rules are easy. But actually, I've been playing with Duolingo, and I think that Norwegian is a particularly easy language to learn.
Oh.
I'm getting excited about my learning Norwegian because the verbs don't conjugate. You see, I always find Spanish difficult because the Spanish, when you're conjugating a verb in Spanish, you drop the preposition. You don't say I run, you just say run.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to conjugate the verb to get the sense. You have to know what the verb ending means to know what the preposition was.
Right.
right? But in Norwegian, it's the other way around. The verb doesn't change. You just put
Oh,
the preposition in front of it.
yeah. That was always the problem in my Spanish
Exactly.
classes
I'm
is
like,
conjugating
wow,
verbs.
that's exactly. I was like, that's easy. So you just need to know the word for run, and then you just need to know the 6 prepositions,
Right.
and you're rolling. I was like,
Okay.
oh,
Maybe
Norwegian for me.
maybe Norwegian should become the
The
common
lingua
tone.
franca.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, by the way, lingua franca means French language, which is kind of weird that means the common language
Right.
when you're describing English. But
Right.
hey.
Well, thank you all for joining Languages of Harrenhal.
So as I was saying, the waif has been stunted in her development by the poison that she handles, because she tends the pool, and so she handles the poison, and that's the reason that she is why Arya thought she was a child of roughly the same age, but she is in fact 36 years of age, which is
Yeah.
crazy.
She looks like a 6-year-old, I think, or something like some very
Oh, even
young.
younger. That's right, even younger than Arya. Yeah, yeah.
Arya wanted to smack her, and she was like, "I can't, this small little child." And then she learned she's 36.
Okay, now I'm gonna smack you.
Yeah, it's quite the sacrifice. The kindly man says she has given the many-faced god her present, her future, her everything. She's never going to grow into adulthood, which is it doesn't seem to be a sacrifice that Arya's asked to make. In fact, she asks, "Would I have to do that?"
She asks, "Will I have to make
Yeah.
it?" Yes, and she's told no. Yeah.
But will there be an equally large sacrifice yet to come? Like that it seems unfair that the waif would have to give that much, and Arya would just have to no longer be Arya Stark. So, what to see?
So the kindly man and the waif get visitors, which sort of feels a little incongruous to me. It feels like they're cut off from the world, but they do get visitors.
Yeah, and they have meetings and stuff. Arya was
Yeah.
Arya sat in on one of the meetings as someone to pour the drinks and such for the attendees. And I wonder,
I'm not Arya. I'll be a server this evening.
right? I am no one, and I'll be.
I'm no one.
I wondered if they were possibly faceless men coming to get assignments.
That's what it felt like. It was felt because who else would the priests of the Black and White of the House of Black and White meet with other than other priests of it? It feels like this is too secluded of a sect to have friends and family outside.
Right,
you have to abandon them.
Yeah,
all.
you're no one. Yeah. So so it does seem that way. And then she starts asking the kindly man about Jack and Hagar, and the kindly man feigns ignorance. I have no idea who this Jack and Hagar is you're talking about.
Professes ignorance.
Yes.
He may be ignorant because Jack and Hagar might be his Westeros name, and the kindly man's never heard of it.
I don't imagine he was using his real name on assignment.
Right, yeah. Faceless man, but I am Engelbert Humperdinck.
And yeah, he's definitely not using his real looks. So Arya couldn't even describe him. Be like, that guy. So
that guy.
Could he be Jack and Hagar?
Yes, that's a possibility. Yes, and when I get to the TV show, I'll mention that possibility.
I thought you might.
Uh-huh.
And does she have a warg dream while standing still? She is told to stand statue still during the meeting that she is attending.
Does she think she's a cockle?
she dreams of being a wolf running at the front of a large pack.
Oh, that's right.
So I wonder. I think maybe she slipped into a warg dream because she was so, her mind wandered so much.
Yeah. But so the whole chapter is kind of like it's good for Arya. I mean, God, a chapter where Arya isn't like physically threatened with death is kind of a good Arya chapter.
Agreed.
She's given what to an average 10-year-old, and as particularly a castle-raised 10-year-old, would be an extremely arduous position. Being a fishmonger on the docks in a language you don't speak would put the fear of God into most people. But for Arya, it's like, a vacation from her life.
That's all you need me to do? I don't have to kill anyone or hide from anyone that's trying to kill me.
But she feels good about life. It's an interesting ending to the chapter. She's Valar Morgulising as she crosses the bridge.
Yes, I felt like there was a bit of a contradiction between her words and her feelings at the end of the chapter. Yeah. She's so happy while walking the streets, at the same time reciting her kill list and repeating "all men must die" as if it's zippity-doo-dah, you know?
I guess she's thinking, and they're going to.
I guess. Yeah.
Particularly the people on this list.
Right.
Okay, brief interlude while we have some spoilers. If you join at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels, you can get on in the spoilers. All right, thank you. Those are good spoilers. Do you have some background for us?
Surely. So Arya notices a demographic trend regarding who prays to what god's statue. Some of the gods listed I have no additional info for, such as the hooded wayfarer that poor men are known to pray to, Bacalon, the pale child that soldiers pray to. I don't have a lot on Bacalon. The moon pale maiden that sailors often pray to. I don't really have much more info on. But a few of the gods mentioned, I do have some additional info that I can share. The Lion of Night, for instance, that rich men are known to pray to, is a Yiddish god, and I'm saying Yiddish as in from Yiti, not Yiddish, as in the language.
Yes, okay.
What I can tell you about the Lion of Night is that he is said to have fathered a son with the Maiden Maid of Light, which is another Yiddish god. Their child became known as the god on earth, and he ruled the great empire of Dawn for about 10,000 years, so the story goes. His descendants each ruled for a shorter duration than their predecessor. Eventually, a ruler known as the Amethyst Empress was murdered by her own jealous brother, who dubbed himself the Bloodstone Emperor. Now, the Yiddish believe that this betrayal and the subsequent actions of the Bloodstone Emperor caused the Maiden Maid of Light to turn her back on the world and the Lion of Night to punish mankind, which brought about the Long Night, which isn't just a Westerosi thing, I'll remind you. It was affected Essos as well.
Right.
To fight back against the Lion of Night, it's said that 5 forts were built in Yiti by the Pearl Emperor to prevent the god and his demons from reaching the mortal world. So that's what I got on the Lion of Night. Now, the Weeping Woman, who old women tend to pray to, as far as Arya can tell, well, there is a Weeping Lady of Lys, who's a god worshipped by the Lyseni, obviously. Now, it's never stated, but it does seem likely that there's a correlation between this god and the poison Tears of Lys, which Lysa used to kill her husband Jon.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The Weeping Woman.
Yes.
Weeping, tears.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
Exactly. Now, the Merlin King, which sailors also tend to pray to, if that sounded familiar, it's because in the Davis's rock formation, when he was stranded in Blackwater Bay, was part of a collection of rocks called the Spears of the Merlin King.
Oh, I thought it sounded familiar.
Yes.
Now I remember, yes.
In that same episode, I did a background bit on Ursula Upcliffe. She's from a Vale House from Witch Isle. She claimed to be the bride of the Merlin King. People thought she was a sorcerer, and she died fighting the Andals. I believe she actually had her head ripped off, so... and also, the ship that took Littlefinger and Sansa from King's Landing to the Vale was called the Merlin King. So it's...
Maybe that's what I was remembering.
Yes, it's popped up from time to time.
Well, thank you. That was really good. Comparison with the television show, this was all broadly kept. The kindly man is Jaqen H'ghar. His face turns into Jaqen H'ghar, and he's Jaqen H'ghar, and she knows it.
I remember
but much
that.
of her training is given over to the waif. All of the "who are you, no one" back and forth is between her and the waif.
Okay, yeah.
Jaqen takes a sort of back seat on all this.
The waif is a bit older than how she's portrayed, right?
Yes, she's probably 5 or 6 years older than Arya.
Okay, that's what I remember.
The actress, yeah.
Yeah.
She hides Needle in the same way in the TV show, and in the same as the book, some of the temple is off limits to her, and that is where the bodies go, the bit that's off limits to her.
Uh-huh.
She is very curious about it. She does get to be a fishmonger for a while, but her name is not Kat, it is Lana. when she's the fishmonger. Yeah, so
Okay.
I don't know why they chose that. Maybe just to avoid the confusion with Cat, the other Cat Stark.
Right. Or Sally.
Yes, or Sally.
They didn't want that tongue twister.
Yeah. Pedantry Corner, I don't have much apart from the fact, and I don't know if this is just intentionally not telling us something or an oversight, but it is strangely unclear what the fate of those who don't drink from the pool is. Whether or not they leave and come back another time, or they were going to die anyway. It seemed like, why would you tell us most of the people don't drink from the pool if you're not going to tell us, so what happens
What happens to them? Right.
Right.
Yeah. There's another line where she said people come to pray for a day, a week, a year. And I thought, that might have just been hyperbole. But that's a long time to sit there and pray for a whole year and not drink the water.
Well, maybe, is it possible they're praying for someone else's death?
Yes,
is that
right.
why they don't drink?
Yes, could be. It could be.
Yeah. That's a little bit harsh. A whole year.
Right.
I mean, really, save yourself a year, go out and do it yourself.
Right.
News and notes. We've had to move the sustainer call. It'll have been done by the time you hear this, but we can't report on how much fun it was. We can only speculate.
That's right. And I'm speculating that it will be a lot of fun.
A barrel of fun.
Yes.
And in news sure to set bells ringing throughout King's Landing, Jenny of Allstones is filling in for me next week on episode 249. So it is sure to be erudite, knowledgeable, and full of less gaffes and cluelessness. So thank you for doing that, Jenny. I will have a very nice vacation because the podcast is in good hands.
That's right. Yes, I'm looking forward to it. Jenny and I haven't done an episode together, I think, since last September. So
wow,
it's been a while. So I'm looking forward. Not that I'm looking forward to you not being here, but it's always so it'll be nice to mix things up with Jenny for an episode. And we have a new Buy Me a Coffee sustainer.
Woo.
The real Adam of Hull has joined us at the small council level, which is currently our highest offering. So, the real Adam of Hull, we hope that you enjoy all that comes with your tier, and we will surely have many interactions with you, and we look forward to them all.
You know, where we live, the city in which we live is twinned with the city of Hull in the United Kingdom.
I did not know that. But now I do. And I know a lot about language and all kinds of things I didn't know before we started recording. But Adam, thank you so much, real Adam of Hull. It's always great to have a new sustainer, and
we're looking forward to meeting you as well.
Definitely. I've sent Adam a message letting him know about our sustainer call, so I hope even though he just joined,
we'll get to meet him very soon.
Yes, I hope so.
We've had a review from Fritz in Apple Podcasts in Germany. The book companion you've been looking for. This podcast is excellent. The hosts work along the chapters of all the books of A Song of Ice and Fire, have thorough discussions with background info and theories. Pedantry Corner is a lovely selection for all natural nitpicks and often exposes funny elements of the story and the overall good sense of humour of the hosts. In addition, they start every episode with sharing nice stories of their personal lives, allowing listeners to get to know them on a deeper level and having random insights into what it means to be a human being. Enjoying Ghosts of Harrenhal podcast is like hanging out with friends. Simon and Mackelly, sorry if that's not how you spell it, nailed it, Fritz.
You did, yes, good job.
Are the nerdy friends you've always wanted but could not find in your social sphere. Well, thank you so much, Fritz. We are the friends you were looking for. And we consider you a friend too.
Yes, thank you so much. That's a wonderful review. We really appreciate that. Thank you.
Let's conclude this one. Arya has made the grade in the House of Black and White. I mean, she's given the clothing of the acolyte an upgrade from the thrown away small clothes of the servant.
Yeah.
Hey, those were ours. Those weren't Arya's.
Yeah.
But the kindly man does know she hid Needle, so that's a strange thing that he's not making a big fuss of that.
Yeah, it's hard. There's no way he doesn't know. If he knew unless he just looked in her chamber and said, "Oh, all that stuff's gone. She must have thrown it all out."
Yeah.
It just assumed that needle was
But
included.
if that was how he was, then when she said, "I'm no one," he'd be like, "Oh,
Oh, good. You finally listened.
that's what I was looking for." In you come.
Why didn't you say that the first time?
I feel like he's turning a blind eye. And I don't know if... I mean, obviously, to become a priest of a religion, you have to be somewhat pure in that religion. But maybe there's a sort of like a sense of everyone's going to have their baggage.
Right. Sure.
He just wanted her to get rid of as much of hers as possible.
Yeah. Do we believe that she can truly give everything up for this life? It's hard to imagine.
Clearly not so far.
Right. She couldn't give up Needle yet. Maybe in time, she'll decide that she doesn't need Needle and get rid of it or never go back to it. But it seems, anyway, as you said, that she's convinced the kindly man and the waif, they've made her a novice. They're investing in training. So, yeah.
Yeah. You know what worries me just a tiny bit is the way that the Unsullied are treated.
Oh, okay.
Do you think that as a last rite of passage, he's going to be like, now I want you to go out and pull that needle out from under that cobblestone and throw that in the river?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's...
It's the puppy.
Right.
It's the beloved puppy she has to kill.
Yes, I see the connection now between the Unsullied and this possibility. Right. Yeah.
But she's getting some... I mean, honestly, we've worried for Arya's future, but it's good to have a trade.
Yep.
And if she's going to, being a cockle seller... I don't know if you know this, but in the pubs in England, you often get people coming into the pubs selling seafood to eat there and then.
Really? I did not know that.
On a plastic tray with straps over their shoulders that hold the tray in front of them. They'll have cockles and mussels and they'll sell them there and then for you to eat. I bet that's strange to you, isn't it? That's the truth, but it is the truth.
If I didn't know you were telling the truth, I would say you lie. Much like the kindly man says to Arya. That is mind-blowing.
Maybe it stopped. When I used to go to my local pub, when I was a little bit too young to go to my local pub, probably once every 2 or 3 weeks, a seafood salesman would come in with his tray and he would sell.
Wow. That's pretty neat.
I feel like I'm from King's Landing and this was a bowl of brown. Now I'm saying it, but this really did happen.
I have to say, I have learned so much in this episode, and most of it doesn't have to do with Arya 2 of A Feast for Crows.
You can't really rely on me for that stuff. Random nonsense. Gotcha.
It's been eye-opening, this episode. I hope the rest of you have been as enlightened as I have.
But Arya is a cockle seller. For anyone else, this would be a hard job. But for Arya, it's like, oh man, finally. Right. Something I can do on a daily basis that doesn't bring me into mortal danger.
Right. An actual honest task where, I have a place to come home to at night and a job to do in the day. Right.
Although, does she? She got kicked out. Does she have a place to stay outside of the temple?
Yeah, she's going to go stay with a man and sell the
fishmonger himself. His
right. Yeah.
So next week, when I'm not here, we will have another incognito Stark girl.
That's right.
The first chapter named for Elaine.
All right. Yes.
Exciting.
Very exciting.
And someone might stand in for me in this chapter.
Yeah, and isn't it fitting that Jenny and I both love the Eyrie, and the episodes in the Eyrie couldn't be a better fit.
You go. Well, there's 3 ways that you can help us. You can leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review like Fritz did on Apple Podcasts Germany. And again, thankful for that.
Yes,
you can buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostharrenhall, and you become a sustainer at any of the various levels there. There's a tier to match your budget and your interest. And if you get to the higher levels, as the real Adam of Hull did, you can join us for our sustainer calls and listen to our spoilers. Or you can just donate directly to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhall.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, for one thing, you can send us some fan mail with the link in any of our episodes. But you can also keep up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments by checking us out on our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.